Welcome back to Historical Painting, where we explore great historical stories. In the previous section, we learned about the early days of the St. Mark, predecessor of Manchester City. Today, we will continue our journey together, as the football team gradually separates from the church and becomes a professional football club. Let's explore the development and important turning points of Manchester City. In the second half of the 19th century, due to the lack of schools and the huge gap between the rich and the poor, there were many young men on the streets with nothing to do and nowhere to release their energy. In the end, they all vented their anger with their fists. Bishop Arthur Connell of St. Mark's Church in Manchester, along with his daughter Anna Connell and many other church members, founded a Young Men's Association in 1870. The original purpose of this association was very simple, just to gather idle young men on the streets and organize some activities to reduce violence. In order for the young men in the association to be able to release their energy in a safe and hygienic way, they formed a cricket team. As a result, after playing cricket for a while, they created a football team. As for how this football team came into being, I guess you can easily imagine. In November 1880, St. Mark's Football Club was officially formed and they played their first match against Michaelsfield Church. They did not win any of their next matches until March 1881, when they faced Staleybridge Clarence. St. Mark's finally experienced victory. It is rumored that the team was actually founded by Anna Connell. Some football historians have used this information to suggest that it may be the only club in the world to be founded by a woman. However, this claim has since been questioned by Manchester City's official historians. They argue that although Anna did lead the organization of the Young Men's Association and some of its activities, there is no evidence that she had any involvement with the football team. This story remains controversial to this day. After the team was founded, it gradually attracted a number of amateur players, including Walter Chew, who joined the team in 1884 and later became captain of St. Mark's. He also played for Bellevue. Walter helped the two teams merge into a single team, but just a year later they split for unknown reasons. The remaining players of St. Mark after the team dissolved changed its name to Gorton Association Football Club, while the other team changed its name to Gorton Athletic. After briefly merging and separating, the team began to gradually separate from St. Mark, but they retained the name St. Mark by changing to St. Mark's Association Football Club. Mark Gordon. At the same time, the team's first uniform was introduced, which was all black and featured a white Malta-style cross. Renamed Gordon, they joined the Manchester 7th Division in 1884-85 and took part in the Manchester Challenge Cup, but lost 1-0 to Dalton Hall in the first round. During this period, their main opponents were West Manchester and Haywood Central. However, after beating Gorton Athletic 5-1 and winning their first local cup, they considered Newton Heath their main opponents. Fate gave them the opportunity to face Newton Heath in a local tournament not long after, but due to the huge difference in strength, Gorton lost 11-1. Realizing the gap between themselves and local clubs, they began to reform to become a real club. First, they solved the problem of yards, because renting yards in many places affected revenue. Finally, they found Hyde Road ground, near a railway bridge in Ardwick. After a deal with Hyde Road Hotel, they got their official home ground. To attract more local fans, they changed their name to Ardwick Association Football Club. After having a home ground and a stable revenue, the club began paying a limited weekly salary to some first-team players in recognition of their contributions. Not long after, the team moved from an amateur club to a professional club. In 1889, a massive explosion occurred at the Hyde Road mine, killing 23 miners. As the only club in the area, Ardwick felt the need to act. While they were looking for ways to help, Newton Heath had a similar initiative. The two teams teamed up and organized a friendly match, with all ticket revenue donated to the relief fund. This action helped both clubs gain local support, and Ardwick became one of the most popular teams among the working class. During this time, when traffic is still difficult, football fans in Manchester often come to watch any team play. By the 1960s, traffic was growing, and the two biggest clubs in Manchester began to compete for fans. Back to the story, coach Lawrence Furness took advantage of the growing number of fans and made an expedition to Scotland to search for players. After the trip, he also came to survey the Bolton Wanderers football team. This trip produced a number of outstanding players, including William Douglas, David Robson, and the player who later became an England international, David Weir. With the efforts of these players, in 1891, the team defeated Newton Heath in the Manchester Cup final and won the championship for the first time. This victory attracted the attention of the English Football Association. After the league merged in 1892, Ardwick joined the Football League and became one of the founder members of the second division. However, the team lacked experience and faced a serious financial crisis during the 1893-94 season, forcing the club to restructure. At the same time, they changed their name to a more international name, and finally, on April 16, 1894, Ardwick Association Football Club officially changed its name to Manchester City Football Club. After changing its name, Manchester City was registered as a company. The manager at the time, Joshua Parlby, signed a 19-year-old youngster from Norwich, Victoria named Billy Meredith. Meredith, who later played for both Manchester City and Manchester United, is considered England's first football star. An interesting anecdote about Meredith is that he always liked to hold his toothpick while competing, and even though he was not injured because of this habit, he still lived to be 83 years old. After the entry of many young talents, Manchester City gradually became a more mature club, with an audience of about 20,000 people. In 1899 they won the league title and were promoted to the First Division for the first time. This was also a memorable time when they reached the second round of the FA Cup for the first time, and the 1903-2004 season became an unforgettable memory when Manchester City overcame many opponents to reach the final. Thanks to Meredith's goal, Manchester City defeated Bolton 1-0 to win the first major trophy in their history and finished runner-up in the league that season. At this point, Manchester City's story is still very long, with many ups and downs, but this period has marked a solid start for the club in its journey to conquer future titles. The following season, Manchester City still maintained good form. In the final match of the season, they only needed to beat Aston Villa to overtake Newcastle United, who were on the same points as them, and win the First Division title for the first time. However, after the match ended, Manchester City not only lost to Aston Villa with a score of 2-3 but also lost their future. Aston Villa captain Alec Leake immediately accused Billy Meredith of trying to bribe him with £10 to lose the match. Although the Football Association found no direct evidence from Meredith, he was still banned from playing for 18 months. An angry Meredith sent a letter to Sports News, revealing that he was following manager Tom Maley's orders in bribing Alec Leake, and expressing outrage that he was the only one punished. At that time, such behavior was not uncommon. Many private football clubs carried out similar shady transactions. Even thousands of complaints were sent to the Football Association about the practices. Bribery cases, but most of them are ignored. This scandal has caused serious consequences for Manchester City. Coach Tom Maley, the team's former chairman Forrest, and 17 other players were sacked. Manchester City was also fined £900, a very large amount at that time. In January 1907, the Football Association forced Manchester City to auction off 17 dismissed players. The auction was held at the Queen's Hotel in Manchester. And it was there that the chairman of Manchester United, Ernest Mangnall, bought Billy Meredith for £500, along with 3 other players, Herbert Burgess, Sandy Turnbull, and Jimmy Bannister. These players became the backbone of Manchester United and helped them win the First Division Championship in the 1907-2008 season. Without this scandal, Manchester City probably would not have collapsed so much. Before World War I, they were always a team with the potential to compete for the championship. But the scandal almost destroyed the team, leaving Manchester City in a state of crisis. After World War I, the league was reorganized and Manchester City continued to have bad luck. In November 1920, during a match, a cigarette but accidentally set fire to the main stand at Hyde Road. With no other choice, Manchester City was forced to look for a new home stadium. Initially, they planned to move to Old Trafford, but due to rent problems, they eventually decided to continue renovating the Hyde Road ground and stay there for a while longer. However, this is not a long-term solution, as Hyde Road's facilities can no longer meet the club's needs. After that, Manchester City planned to move to the Bellevue area, but at the suggestion of coach Ernest Magnol, they decided to choose Main Road in the Moss Side area as their new home ground. On August 25, 1923, 58,159 fans attended Manchester City's first match at the new ground, and the team defeated Sheffield United 2-1. However, bad luck has not yet given up on them. In 1926, Manchester City were relegated to the second division. It was not until the 1930s, with the addition of excellent players like Matt Busby and Frank Swift, that Manchester City gradually returned to the leading group. In the 1929-30 season, they finished third in the first division, and after David Halliday joined the team, Manchester City had enough strength to face the strongest teams of that period. Although Manchester City lost twice to Everton and Arsenal in the FA Cup, they eventually won the 1933-34 FA Cup final, defeating Portsmouth 2-1 and lifting the title for the second time. This prestigious trophy. In 1937, Manchester City won the First Division title for the first time in the club's history. However, shortly after winning the title, Manchester City set a record in English football by becoming the first team in history to be relegated immediately after winning the league. Because of failures like these, Manchester City fans began to console themselves by saying that their teams suffered from Man City syndrome, a way to explain the fact that Manchester City often failed in these matches. Important moment, this syndrome lasted throughout the years after World War II, severely affecting the team's performance. However, the appearance of the Revy Plan strategy has brought new hope to the team. This plan revolves around Manchester City player Don Revy and building team tactics based on his playing style. With this strategy, Manchester City reached 2 consecutive FA Cup finals and won against Birmingham City with a score of 3-1 in the 1955-56 season, winning the FA Cup for the third time. A notable event in this FA Cup final was the serious injury of goalkeeper Bert Trautmann. After a collision with an opposing player, Trautmann suffered a neck injury but remained determined to play until the match ended. 3 days later, when taking an X-ray, it was discovered that his neck was broken in 3 vertebrae, and just a slight collision could have killed him. Trautmann's tenacity and courage helped Manchester City defend the trophy. However, the 1960s and 1970s continued to be a period in which Manchester City was plagued by Man City syndrome. The team had shining moments but still struggled with unfortunate defeats. It was not until the manager's reconstruction plan was implemented that Manchester City gradually escaped this series of failures.